In the early 1800s, the most powerful naval force in Asia wasn't an imperial navy. It was a pirate confederation commanded by a woman who began her life as a prostitute. To understand how she built her empire, you must first understand the world that built her. The city of Canton, nestled at the mouth of the Pearl River, was the financial artery of the Qing Empire. For over a century, if you were a European merchant, you could only conduct business in one tiny district of Canton, known as the 13 Factories. But their money flowed everywhere, creating colossal wealth for the small number of Chinese merchants who were licensed to deal with them. The vast majority of the Cantonese population lived in grinding poverty. The only thing flowing faster than money in Canton was desperation. It was into this volatile, vibrant, and utterly transactional world that Shi Yang was born, sometime around 1775. The flower boats were floating pleasure barges moored on the Pearl River. The women on these boats existed in a harsh social hierarchy. They had no legal standing and few rights, but to survive, especially at the high end, required a level of social intelligence that Shi Yang quickly mastered. She learned how to read men, how to negotiate, how to manage books, and how to command a room filled with powerful men. These skills were her survival mechanism, and they would become the foundational tools of her pirate empire. The Qing court was a land power. They viewed the ocean as a source of chaos, rebellion, and foreign influence. They neglected their navy, letting their coastal defenses rot, focusing instead on internal stability. The Qing rulers had unwittingly ceded control of the entire South China Sea, the most important trade route in Asia, to anyone ruthless and organized enough to take it. And one man was already proving himself to be the most ruthless and organized of all: Zheng Yi. The piracy Shi Yang encountered wasn't the romanticized lone wolf kind. It was massive, organized, and politically charged. But the real game changer came from the south, specifically from the Typhoon rebellion in Vietnam. The Typhoon rebels needed naval muscle, and they didn't care where it came from. They began actively recruiting Chinese pirates and granting them safe harbors in Vietnamese ports. This provided Chinese fleets with two things they desperately needed: political legitimacy on paper, at least, and a secure place to refit, recruit, and sell their stolen goods, far from the reach of the crumbling Qing navy. Zheng Yi was born in the 1760s. He saw that the various pirate groups of the Pearl River Delta, which spoke different dialects, fought over turf and were mostly ineffective against large, well-defended merchant convoys, were wasting their potential. He wanted to control the entire system. In 1801, he brought together the 6 major Cantonese pirate factions. He convinced them all that unification meant exponentially more profit and security. They signed a formal alliance, with Zheng Yi designated as the overall commander of the massive Red Flag fleet, transforming a loose confederation of gangs into a highly structured, almost military organization. He instilled discipline, organized his forces into squadrons, and, most importantly, established a shared treasury system. This meant that the spoils were distributed based on rank, not simply who won the fight. The Red Flag fleet became an untouchable, multicolored empire of the sea, numbering up to 600 large junks and tens of thousands of men. They were far better organized, better equipped, and more disciplined than the pitiful navy the Qing government could muster. Zheng Yi's name struck terror into the hearts of any merchant sailing the South China Sea. This empire needed a consort, and that's what brought Zheng Yi to the flower boats of Canton. Legend says Zheng Yi was so captivated by her beauty, he had her abducted and forcibly married. But the truth is likely far more complex. Historians suggest Shi Yang's reputation preceded her. She wasn't just a pretty face. She was known to be sharp-witted, intelligent, and a phenomenal financial administrator. She ran a business that dealt in complex logistics, high-stakes finance, and volatile human ego. The most compelling version of history suggests she was summoned, or at least strategically pursued, not as a prize, but as a potential partner in business. The negotiation that followed the initial meeting, the marriage agreement, was revolutionary. Shi Yang did not ask to be a consort or a figurehead. She asked for power, structured and formalized. She demanded to be married to Zheng Yi, but also to have full, joint command of the entire Red Flag fleet, not just an advisory role. She required a full seat on the Pirate Council of Captains, the ultimate decision-making body of the Confederation. She negotiated a specific large share of the plunder and the right to maintain her own personal fleet and treasury, within the greater Confederation. She wasn't asking for influence through her husband, she was demanding institutional power in her own name. Recognized that the woman in front of him wasn't a distraction, she was the missing piece to his logistical and administrative puzzle. He agreed. She immediately brought the flower boat's administrative rigor to the red flag fleet. The chaos of piracy began to coalesce into actual governance. Financial administration, as she brought accounting and auditing to the shared treasury. Ensuring everyone was paid, she formalized rules and reporting structures, making the massive fleet easier to manage and command from a central point. Targeting high-value shipping lanes and coastal settlements with brutal efficiency. Under their joint command, they became an economic and military powerhouse. By 1807, Shi Yang had risen from a flower boat to become the co-ruler of a pirate empire. They were the undisputed rulers of the South China Sea, but the sea that had given her everything was about to take it all away in an instant. In November 1807, while conducting operations in Vietnam, far from the central Pearl River Delta, Zheng Yi's vessel was caught in a sudden, brutal typhoon. Zheng Yi drowned. He was only in his early 40s. The Pirate Confederation, which had been a formidable naval superpower just hours before, instantly became a massive leaderless powder keg. Zheng Yi had spent 6 years forcing rival Cantonese captains to work together. These men were powerful, ambitious, and deeply suspicious of each other. They had only yielded to Zheng Yi's strategic genius and military might. With him gone, all those old rivalries resurfaced immediately. A bloody civil war within the Confederation was virtually guaranteed. She was a woman in a world of hardened men, a world where the only accepted authority was demonstrated on the battlefield. She had to command the loyalty of tens of thousands of hardened, ambitious, and superstitious pirates. She was surrounded by rivals who saw her as weak, unprotected, and ripe for overthrow. She needed to move faster and think colder than any of her husband's rivals, and she knew exactly where to turn. The first and most critical hurdle for Zheng Yi Sao was securing the loyalty of her husband's heir apparent, Cheng Po Tsai, also known as Chang Pao. Born the son of a fisherman, he was abducted by Zheng Yi in 1798 as a teenager. Zheng Yi recognized the boy's intelligence, charisma, and natural military talent, and rather than enslaving him, he adopted him as his son and protege. By the time of Zheng Yi's death, Cheng Po Tsai was in his early 20s, already a feared warrior and a highly capable commander, leading a major squadron within the Red Flag Fleet. Crucially, Cheng Po Tsai commanded the devotion of the rank-and-file sailors of the Red Flag. They saw him as one of their own, a man who had risen through merit, a proven fighter. This made him the most dangerous man to Zheng Yi Sao's ambition, but also her only path to survival. Before any of the rival flag captains could make a move, before the news of Zheng Yi's death could fully destabilize the fleet, Zheng Yi Sao forged her strategic alliance with Cheng Po Tsai. She understood that while he had the military might and the devotion of the men, she possessed the two things he lacked: legitimacy and administrative control. Cheng Po Tsai, despite being the adopted son, had no formal claim to the supreme command. Zheng Yi Sao, as the deceased commander's wife and co-commander, held the ceremonial keys to the Confederation's treasury, its alliances, and its command structure. The negotiation was simple but absolute. She would share the command equally with him. By securing the loyalty of her husband's most popular and powerful commander, she instantly legitimized her position and co-opted her most dangerous potential rival. Zheng Yi Sao formalized the pact by marrying Cheng Po Tsai. This marriage solidified her power base entirely and united it with its most capable military leader. Together, they now commanded the Red Flag Fleet and, by extension, the entire Confederation. With Cheng Po Tsai at her side, Zheng Yi Sao had secured the top of the chain of command, but she still had a problem: the sheer scale of chaos. She was now nominally in command of roughly 70,000 pirates, spread across hundreds of ships, all operating across thousands of miles of ocean. For all of Zheng Yi's organizational efforts, the fleet was still, at its core, a sprawling, chaotic rabble. To survive an inevitable clash with the Qing Empire, the fleet needed to be transformed from a group of opportunists into a disciplined, effective fighting force, an actual army. She achieved this through the implementation of a strict, ironclad legal code. The most critical rule concerned plunder. All plunder must be presented, 20% is taken, and placed in the fleet's common treasury. It stopped infighting and, by taxing plunder, funded large-scale, long-term operations, transforming the fleet into a self-sustaining financial state. Other rules maintained the fleet's strategic position. Any pirate going ashore on his own authority shall have his ears perforated. For a second offense, he receives death. This stopped unauthorized raids that could provoke a major imperial response. The most revolutionary aspect involved the treatment of female captives. The assault of a female captive is punishable by death. By formalizing laws against sexual violence, she ensured pirate captains focused on fighting, not infighting, thus maintaining the fleet's professionalism. With her fleet united behind the military strength of Cheng Po Tsai and fiercely disciplined by her iron code, Zheng Yi Sao was now the undisputed commander-in-chief. She was the pirate queen. Now, with the most disciplined naval force in Asia at her command, she turned her eyes toward the shore. The Qing Empire had ignored the pirates for too long. Now, they would learn to fear her.
Inevitably, the humiliated Qing Empire was forced to respond. The most famous defeat came when she crushed the Qing admiral Qui Lun. Qui Lun, tasked with exterminating the pirates, saw his fleet ambushed and destroyed in devastating engagements. The key was her tactical superiority. Her ships were smaller, faster, and better handled than the bulky, slow imperial warships, which were often poorly maintained and led by incompetent officials. Zheng Yi Sao's captains consistently outmaneuvered and destroyed the Qing forces. Her reign was so absolute that it soon involved Western powers. Treating them as just another rival, she had public encounters with Portuguese ships from Macau and vessels of the British East India Company. In a bold display of force, she captured a Portuguese brigantine, demanding and receiving a large ransom, proving that not even Western naval power could intimidate the Empress of the South China Sea. The Qing Emperor, utterly humiliated, recognized he could not outfight her. The government changed strategy under Governor-General Bai Ling, deciding to outlast her by focusing on cutting off supplies and fracturing her unity. Bai Ling implemented a multi-pronged approach: naval blockade. They built a new fleet and trapped the Red Flag Fleet in Tung Chung Bay near modern-day Hong Kong, aiming to starve her of food and fresh water. Economic warfare. They offered mass amnesty and large rewards to any pirate who would defect, attempting to break her disciplined coalition from within. Hired guns. They paid Portuguese and British privateers to use their superior cannons and European gunboats to harass the Red Flag Fleet. The war culminated in the Battle of the Cheklap Kok in 1809, where the government tried desperately to destroy her. Zheng Yi Sao orchestrated a brilliant breakout under the cover of bad weather, completely evading the Qing trap. The blockades were draining her resources, and defections were beginning to mount. Zheng Yi Sao was undefeated, but she saw the writing on the wall. The Qing Empire could always outspend her. Though the government offered amnesty in late 1809, their initial terms demanded unconditional surrender. Zheng Yi Sao rejected them. She responded with one of the most audacious moves in criminal history. Instead of sending an envoy, she decided to go herself. In April 1810, Zheng Yi Sao, accompanied by pirate wives and children, sailed directly into Guangzhou. Unarmed, she walked into the heart of her enemy's power to meet with Governor-General Bai Ling. It was a stunning display of political leverage, daring the Qing to execute her and instantly reignite the war. The negotiation was a masterclass, effectively a peace treaty between equals. Her revolutionary demands were absolute. She and her principal commanders would keep their vast fortunes and plundered wealth for retirement. None of her pirates would have to surrender or kneel before the emperor, a critical matter of honor. They would simply walk away free. Her top commanders, including Cheng Po Tsai, would receive government positions and ranks. Bai Ling, facing a humiliated emperor and an unwinnable coastal war, agreed to nearly everything. The aftermath was historic. In April 1810, the Red Flag Fleet surrendered under a structured agreement. Cheng Po Tsai was made a lieutenant in the Qing Navy, tasked with hunting down other pirates. Zheng Yi Sao, at age 35, retired as an incredibly wealthy free woman. She settled in Guangzhou, opened a wildly successful gambling house, and lived out her days as a respected businessperson, dying peacefully of old age in 1844. Contrast her fate with virtually every other major pirate in history: Blackbeard, Calico Jack, Bartholomew Roberts, who all died violently. Zheng Yi Sao built an empire, challenged the great powers of the world, and then walked away on her own terms. Did she cross the line into dishonor by surrendering her fleet? Or was it the single greatest move in a life defined by brilliant strategy?